Hi all, this is Aditya and welcome back to the Floating School. Today I would be continuing the discussion on the topic salient features of Indian economy. In the previous session, we discussed that the Indian economy is dependent on agriculture, it's a mixed economy, it's a dual economy. In case if you missed the previous session, please visit my website, it's www.thefloatingschool.com. But let us take the discussion forward today. Indian economy is also an underdeveloped economy. Now I know that most of you won't agree with this point, but you have to understand that the term underdeveloped is a relative term. If you are not developed, you are underdeveloped, right? If we compare the per capita income of United States of America with India, the difference is about 25 to 30 times, which means that the if the per capita income of India is X, the per capita income of US is 25x. Can you believe this? Now let me give you some more points. Let us look at the structure of economies. Usually it is seen that in developed economies the share of agriculture towards the GDP is about 2.5%, but in case of India it is about 14%. Again, the share of industry is seen to be within 25 to 30% range, and in India it's within that range, it's 27%. And again, the service sector contributes to about 60 to 70%. In India we have about 60%. So everything is fine except this. We want to bring this down. We have to bring this down to this level, 2.5 or 3%. Please make no mistake, I am not saying that the agriculture sector should degrow. I am not saying that we should shrink our agriculture sector. I am saying that these two sectors should grow so rapidly that the contribution of this sector comes down to 2.5%. And naturally agriculture sector is dependent upon land, right? And we cannot create land, right? So that is what I'm saying, that the contribution of these two sectors should grow so rapidly and the size of the Indian GDP should become so massive that the contribution of agriculture sector should come down to 2.5%. It is also seen that in the developed economies, if the occupational structure is similar to the structure of the economy, let me give you an example. It is seen that in developed economies, if the share of agriculture to the GDP is 5%, then the population employed in agriculture should also be around 5%. But what do we see in India? We know that the agriculture sector contributes to 14%, but 49% of the population is dependent on agriculture sector, right? Now let us move to the fifth point. Although the Indian economy is underdeveloped, but we are developing at a very fast rate, right? So we are also a developing economy. Let me give you a couple of points to prove this, that we are a developing economy. The very first census that was ever conducted in India was done by the British in the year 1881. In that census, we came across these really interesting facts that at that time in 1881 the overall literacy rate in India was less than 16%. And what is the progress today after 130 plus years? Today the literacy rate is about 74%. And in that first census we came to know that the life expectancy was really pathetic, just 32 years, and today it's almost the double, 66 years, more than double. And the IMR was about 218. So what is IMR? I have discussed IMR in the previous session, but let me discuss it once again quickly. IMR is infant mortality rate. IMR tells us that how many children are dying in a particular country before celebrating their first birthday, which means that how many children out of 1000 are dying before completing 365 days of birth. This tells us something about the country. If the IMR of a country is high, this means that the country has failed to protect its children. The country has failed to set up affordable healthcare units. The country lacks affordable healthcare. So if the IMR of a country is high, it is not a good thing. It says that the country is backward. So in 1881, out of 1000 children born in a year, about 218 used to die within 365 days, about 20%. Can you believe this? Today we have brought this down to 40, which is really commendable. And the poverty ratio, about 60% of the population in 1881 used to be below the poverty line, used to live in absolute poverty, and today we know that it is about 25%. So we are developing at a rapid rate, there is no doubt about it. Now let us move to the final feature of the Indian economy, and that is the we are also an emerging economy. Now what do you mean by an emerging economy? The very first thing it states that we have not yet emerged, right? If we are emerging, it means that we have not yet emerged, but we are emerging at a very fast rate. But the question is, in what context are we emerging? See, economies like India and China are emerging by the virtue of their fast economic growth. This fast economic growth has lifted millions out of poverty and created a new middle class. And this middle class is the new market for the consumer products and services of the developed economies. Maybe in the past 50 years, they never gave us any importance. But today, the developed economies know that the Indians and the Chinese, they have the purchasing power. So these countries are new markets for our products, right? So we are emerging. The geopolitical importance of these two countries have grown manifolds, right? In multiple, I mean, the geopolitical importance of us have grown and significantly, right? And there's one more point, not we are not just the markets, but we are also the destination for their offshore units, right? High population with rising education level gives these economies a competitive advantage in production. So if you set up a business in LA, imagine the cost that you'll have to incur. You can do the same business by setting up a unit in India or China at a fraction of that cost with the exactly same quality, right? Indians are really competent. They can do the same job at a fraction of the cost. So we are also not just a market for their products, but we are also helping them in doing their business at a very cheap cost. Now India is there was a report by Goldman Sachs in 2003 which claimed that by 2050 Brazil, China, India and Russia could grow to be collectively larger than the G6 economies, right? So I don't believe this is going to happen by 2050, especially because of two reasons. I think Brazil would need at least 5 years to come back on its feet, and Russia is also struggling. So I don't see this happening by 2050. But this says that at least may not be 2050, that 2075, but 2080. But we are emerging. It will happen. The markets based on the emerging countries are also doing really well, right? China-based Lenovo purchased IBM's PC business in 2004. India-based Tata Motors purchased Jaguar and Land Rover in 2008. So even emerging market-based firms are doing really well. Now, this is also a really interesting point that India has become an emerging player in the multi-billion-dollar space market. So Antriksh Corporation is the marketing arm of ISRO for the promotion and commercialization of space products. So Antriksh Corporation has been successfully providing space products and services to countries worldwide. For example, we launched satellites for France, Germany, Singapore, Canada and Algeria. We even launched a satellite for Indonesia. You might say that what is the big deal launching tiny satellites? Does it really matters? It does matters. Did you know that 30 years ago our ex-prime minister Mr. Rajiv Gandhi went to US to get a supercomputer, and US denied us that supercomputer? Our friend Russia was willing to sell it to us. We were ready to pay. but US forced Russia to back out of that deal, and Russia didn't sell us a supercomputer. So I believe from begging for a supercomputer to launching satellites for developed countries in just 30 years, I think it's a long shot. So it does matters, right? So this brings us to the end of our discussion. We discussed that the Indian economy is a mixed economy, it's a dual economy, it's a developing economy, it's an underdeveloped economy, and it is also an emerging economy. I hope it helped you. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you're watching it on YouTube, please visit my website. It's www.thefloatingschool.com. I do have another website. It's www.theastuteinvestor.in. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for coming. See you next time.